What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing a series review of TJ Klune's series Green Creek. I also just recently found out that he actually has written another series which I did not even know existed until my friend told me about it. Now, I know about The Extraordinaries. I have not read those. That's the young adult one, but there's apparently another adult version, a series as well, which is supposed to be also in a very witchy and magical kind of world that's supposed to be very good. So we may potentially be reading those next. But today we will be talking about this incredible series right here, the Green Creek series by TJ Klune. It's reading time here at JB's Corner. Before we jump into the video, for those of you that are new here, I just wanted to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Jaya. I am a fiction addict, and so therefore I consistently read, and I love to talk all things books. So creating this little community here is a great way for me to not only be able to talk about books, but also enjoy them with people who love them. If that sounds like it's up your alley, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. We would love to have you back as part of the community. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much for being here. It means the absolute world to me that you guys are supporting me through this journey and that you're here to talk all things books with me. Now, TJ Klune happens to be one of my all-time favorite authors. One of my favorite books that he's ever written is The House in the Cerulean Sea. I have read pretty much all the standalone adult books that he has written, and I have loved every single one of them. His new book is coming out next year, which I'm very, very thrilled for, very excited to get my hands on and to read. So when I found out about the Green Creek series, at first I was like, what do you mean he wrote a series where it's about humans and werewolves and witches? And secondarily, I was like, what do you mean it's an adult series? And thirdly, when I found there were special editions, you better bet that I was sold right then and there. I mean, all I really needed was the name TJ Klune, but the moment that I heard there were special editions, I had to get them. And so finally, after months of reading these books, we have finally completed the series. Now, you might ask me, why did it take you months to complete these books? You read so much, you love to read, what's going on? Don't let these books deceive you. They look small, but they pack a punch. Each of these books is like almost 500 pages to 600 pages. This book is 498 pages for book one. Book two, which is Ravensong, is 496 pages. Book three, Heartsong, is more than 462 pages because it said 11 months later. Let's see. This one is 468 pages. And then Brothersong, I believe, maybe a little bit on the shorter side. This one is 468 pages. So they are a decent length in terms of each book. They also pack a lot of emotional depth. They have a lot of intensity to the characters. The world building is absolutely phenomenal. The town that's created is phenomenal, but it is emotionally gut-wrenching. It is emotionally devastating to read these books, but I've truly fallen in love with the family and the characters. It is one of those series where as the series progresses, you're like, how can a group of characters go through so much and still stay standing? But it is incredible. So without further ado, let's talk about the first book, Wolfsong. Now, I just want to preface this by saying this is a 6-star read for me. This goes beyond 5-star rating. This book sucked me in so completely, drained me emotionally so intently and intentionally, made me sob, laugh, cry, giggle out loud so many times, made me literally think about it while I was driving to work, coming back from work, talking to my friends, living in the real world. I was so invested in this story that I wanted to spend every waking moment in this book. That is how beautiful Wolfsong is. Wolfsong is following the story of Oxnard Matheson, who is the little boy who lives in the blue house. Now, next to him, there is another house that has been empty for quite some time. Oxnard and his mother have been living together forever in the town of Green Creek. Now, while they have been living there. The family next door, as I mentioned, has been gone, and Oxnard has always been considered a little bit slow in terms of his learning ability, in terms of the speed with which he picks up things. He's always emotionally attuned to everybody. He has one of the kindest hearts you'll ever see. He's very loving. He's very caring. He just wants to be there for his family. But his father is a bit of an angry man. He's a drunkard. He beats his mother. Like, there's all kinds of crazy things going on in the house. And so one day his father packs up and leaves. And when his father leaves, he looks his little boy in the face and says, "I regret so many things in life, but I don't regret you. Don't make me regret you." And then on top of that, he also tells his little boy that you will get shit your entire life, and it's time for you to grow up and be a man. Oxnard takes this to heart. He really believes that men shouldn't cry. He really believes that you have to take everything in stride. He just assumes that people may leave. He gets bullied at school. He deals with a lot of BS, but he basically gets taken in by his mother, being the sweetest woman in the world, is obviously completely devoted to this little boy. And also he finds friends and family in Gordo's workshop. Now, Gordo is the mechanic in town who also used to employ his father. And when his father leaves, Gordo takes special interest in this little boy as well as his mother, given everything that they've gone through. And when Oxnard ends up getting his shirt to work at Gordo's, he officially feels like family. He and all the men who work at the mechanic shop basically create a bond and a little family. Now, in the midst of all this, Oxnard is just going about his day when all of a sudden the Bennett family shows up next door. Now, they have been missing forever, but they're kind of the royalty of Green Creek. They kind of have their hands in everything, and they're very, very genuinely familiar people. Their little boy Joe becomes completely obsessed with Oxnard, and then Oxnard indirectly gets pulled into the Bennett family because of the connection Joe has immediately to Ox. Throughout the course of the book, we learn that they're not everything they seem. In fact, they are actually werewolves. And not even are they werewolves, but they are the kings, the queens, the princess of the werewolf line. Their father is the alpha of all, and he has given his charge to Michelle Hughes before he's come home for some family time. Now, throughout the course of the book, we find out that there is a lot of drama that has taken place that has brought the Bennetts back to Green Creek. We find out that they have history with Gordo. We find out that there is actually history there between a man who was Thomas Bennett, the eldest Bennetts, and the alpha of all, the dads, second, who was basically his support system, who tragically was so emotionally destroyed that he becomes truly evil, who had kidnapped Joe and tortured him as a little boy. And now, as the book progresses, we get to see the romance between Ox and Joe. We get to see the story of wolf mates. We get to see the relationship that Oxnard creates with the Bennett family. We get to see Oxnard growing as a character. We get to see all the crazy things that they go through. And I don't want to share too much on the book because I do feel like I'll give away a lot of what the book has to offer. But I do have to say that at this point, if you have not been convinced to read the Green Creek series, let me just tell you, you will not regret Wolfsong. Even if you just read the one book and you stop, you won't regret Wolfsong. TJ Klune did a phenomenal job, and this is a definite 6-star read for me. At this time, if you don't want any spoilers, I do recommend that you click off of this video, because moving forward, there will need to be spoilers to talk a little bit about the other books. So this now brings me to Ravensong. Now, in the end of Wolfsong, we had a moment where Oxnard almost dies. We know that there was a lot of division that occurred when Joe decides to leave to look for Richard Collins with the brothers. That basically led to Oxnard becoming the first human alpha, now turned werewolf. Ox and Joe have finally gotten their heads out of their asses and they have become mates. And the Bennett family finally has a moment of peace. But we're asking for a little too much if we think that's going to last. So in Ravensong, we find out that Michelle Hughes has been aware that Richard Collins had escaped, and he also find out about the Omegas. Now, Omega wolves are wolves that don't have a sense of pack. They don't have a tether. They're basically broken. And because of this break, they tend to be more like wild animals and prefer to be in their wolf state than in truly human nature or human condition. When Richard Collins momentarily took the alpha power from Oxnard before Joe kills him and gives Oxnard his powers back, Richard was able to call to all the Omegas and bring them under his power. Now the Omegas are responding to Ox, but we don't really know what is going on. Actually, no, Ox finds out he can control them at the end of the book. So in this book, we basically think that everything is going to be fine. And we get to read a little bit of the story of Gordo and Mark. So in this book, we see where Gordo's relationship first began with the Bennets, why he was so nervous to welcome them back into Green Creek and into his life. We get to see the evil monster that Robert Livingstone truly was, and everything that created that man, that selfish, terrible human being, to become even worse than he already was. We see Gordo slowly break apart when the Bennets basically abandon him and leave him behind. We see how hard it is for him to trust them when they come back. We get to see the gut-wrenching, sad story that Mark has to face in realizing that he has to pick either his pack or his brother or Gordo. And we get to see all those backflashes that show us why Gordo is the way he is. We also get a little bit more in terms of the story progression once we see moments of the future. So we get to see Gordo's recollection of everything that happened in his past, as well as up to the point that they returned after hunting Richard Collins. And we slowly get to see Gordo become the witch for both Joe and for Ox, and we get to see the Bennett pack really come together under both alphas. We also then get to see the story of the Omegas and the danger of the Omega bite. We find out that there's actually a certain strain of magic that has been kind of mixed with the violet-eyed Omegas, where basically if they bite someone, the tether that holds them as a beta that keeps the orange in their eyes starts to fade. And this happens by tethers being broken. Gordo and Mark specifically get tested very intensely in this as they are trying to find their way back to each other. And then the moment that they do, that tether starts to break. And eventually this forces Ox to basically open up a few doors, if you will, that allow him the ability to call to both the Omegas as well as all the beta wolves, thereby restoring a certain level of stability in the family. But with both Carter and Mark being infected and they realizing that this happened because of Richard Collins' death and his momentary power as an alpha, as well as the magic that's strung through Robert Livingstone, and the fact that Michelle Hughes may somehow be involved as she's trying to hold on to her power as alpha of all, we are now kicking the story into high gear as we realize that the Bennett pack is going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to go in and take their rightful place as the alpha of all. I thought this book was very, very powerful. I love Gordo's character. He's second to none. The only thing I would say is going into this book, I didn't realize it would be told from the perspective of another character. I was really hoping that it was going to be more of Oxnard and Joe's story. And so it was a little heartbreaking when I realized it was Gordo. So I did pout for about the first, I would say, 2 chapters of this book, hoping that Oxnard was going to come back. Once I realized that it was purely Gordo, though, I was still able to get into the book only because Gordo and Mark's story is so beautiful, and Gordo is my second favorite character in the entire series. And I do think that he deserved his own book. This was by far such an enjoyable book. It was also really, really cute to see the humans accept what werewolves are and see them become a part of the Bennett family and start training and become a part of the pack. It was so interesting to see the dynamic of humans, werewolves, witches all kind of getting together, especially when one of the crux points of this book is the fact that we are now introduced to hunters that are basically slowly killing off werewolves. We also find out about Elijah and her craziness and her entire King family craziness, and we see this never-ending loop that's been going on from generation to generation to generation, whether it be Abel Bennett, Thomas Bennett, or now Joe Bennett, dealing with the fact that the Livingstone name, the Bennett name, and the King name keep circulating one another, and there's this never-ending world of hate. And now it's up to Joe and Ox and Gordo to kind of change that history. But unfortunately, history does keep repeating itself. So it was a really beautifully done book. And I think it was really, really heartbreaking the way the book ends, which is that everyone is still able to hold a sense of control and a semblance of mind because of Ox now having the ability to speak to and lead the Omegas. But at the same time, we still see that the tether is slightly frayed in the case of Mark and Gordo, as well as in the case of Carter and Kelly. And so I think it was just a really beautiful book in general. But it did leave us in a very interesting and poignant place in the book series. I forgot to mention that for Ravensong, I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars only because I did feel like there were moments of the book that were a little bit slow. I do feel like it was still an amazing read, and I love Gordo and Mark's characters, so I did thoroughly enjoy this book as well. But Wolfsong, by far in this series, is the one that has my heart. The next book that we'll talk about is Heartsong. Now, this is the third book in the series, and in this, we are following the story of Kelly and his love interest, Robbie. Now, we are introduced to Robbie Fontaine in the first book, actually, and we get to see Oxnard's relationship to Robbie and how he becomes so dear to the Bennett family. We also get little hints of the fact that there's clearly something going on between Robbie and Kelly. So this book was a little gut-wrenching to start off reading because in this book, we start off with Robbie being back with Michelle Hughes and with Ezra, who is Michelle Hughes' new witch. Now, I think it was pretty apparent from the beginning of the book who Ezra really is, but just in case people don't know, I won't spoil it, but I do think it was really interesting. And it was so sad to see that Robbie had completely forgotten everything in his past. And he was led to believe that the Bennets are dangerous and the Bennets are evil. So now in this book, this is a memory loss trope book. So if that's something that's going to drive you up the wall, which it did for me, just know that is going to be there till the very, 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 very end of this book. That is the trope of this book. So when Robbie finally makes it back to the Bennett pack, he does start reforming his connections and bonds with all of these various characters. We get to see Robbie kind of dealing with the duality of being exposed to the Bennets and realizing how wonderful they are and what amazing people they are. But at the same time, because of his memory wipe and because of the other memories that he has planted, still feeling a certain level of connection to Ezra and Michelle Hughes and this need to go back and this confusion of like who's actually telling the truth. Obviously, the Bennets will win and Robbie does eventually, at the very, very end, get his memories back. But I do think it was really sweet to see Kelly and Robbie's story in this. I also think it was really fun to really get a huge kick and jump into the book in terms of understanding who Robert Livingstone really is, his power, the danger that he has. And I think the end of this book was like really, really intense. I think it was also very interesting to see Carter's hints of having a connection to this Timberwolf that everybody else sees. Later on to find out who that Timberwolf actually is was very fascinating. And I do think that while the beginning half of this book made me very irritated and angry, the second half was amazing. I also think the world building in this was phenomenal. I think everything in regards to understanding the Omegas, the magic that runs underneath, the level of corruption that Robert Livingstone has actually embedded into the wolves themselves, the way that he's messing with the children, just everything that's happening is so insane. And I think all of that was very interesting to read. We also get a little bit more history from the perspective of Thomas Bennett, and we get to see a little bit more in terms of the mistakes that Abel Bennett, Thomas Bennett, all of the predecessors have made. And we kind of get to see that Elizabeth Bennett and Thomas Bennett weren't perfect. They actually made mistakes. But the nice thing about this book is that it shows that they're willing to own those mistakes and learn from them. And I think it really shows change in the way that Ox and Joe keep finding themselves in similar patterns, but keep trying to change the pattern that is occurring. So that was really interesting to read. I also love Kelly's character. I think Kelly is a character that's so soft-spoken and so kind-hearted and so like I'm the brother kind of vibes that he can very easily be forgotten. And it was really nice to see Kelly get a book of his own. And it was really sweet to see Robbie and Kelly's relationship grow and them find their way back to each other as the mating bond has been erased from Robbie. So I think it was really sweet to see that and kind of the fact that love will conquer all. I think you get a little bit of everything in Heartsong. I think it was a very beautifully done book. And I do think it really progressed the story forward in terms of getting ready for the final book and setting the stage for the final battle. However, I do feel like while this was an absolutely incredible book, the fact that he doesn't have his memory the whole book and the fact that you have to deal with it the entire book did get to me after a certain point. And for that reason and that reason alone, I ended up giving this book a 3.5 stars. I do hope I haven't given away too many spoilers with any of these books. I do feel like it's really hard to talk about so many of these characters and the storylines and the plots without revealing something from the previous book. So I will say that this one being the final book, there's probably going to be a lot more spoilers. If you haven't read this book yet, I would recommend hopping off of this video. So I'll actually start by rating this book first. This was actually a 5-star read for me. This was absolutely phenomenal. I think this was my second favorite book in the series outside of Wolfsong originally. And this is following the story of Carter and his love interest. At this point, if you have not read this book, I strongly suggest that you hop off the video. And from there, we will continue. So this is following the story of Carter and Gavin Livingstone. In the last book, we obviously got to see Gavin kind of sacrifice himself, cut off his bonds with this newfound family and this connection that he's created with Carter in order to save their lives. I think it was really interesting to see Carter take off, especially now that he's just gotten his Omega back, just gotten his connections with everyone back when Robert Livingstone's magic was broken as he became a wolf. And now all of a sudden we find Carter willing to risk everything to go find Gavin. We see him making the same mistakes of not relying on his pack, the same mistake that Joe made with Ox, and yet he's doing it again. But when he finally meets Gavin, which I'm glad happens very, very early on in the book, it was very sweet to see the way that Joe and Kelly show up for him. I think one of my favorite parts of this book, outside of watching the relationship between Carter and Gavin and watching the relationship between Gavin and Gordo, which I think were so sweet, was that this book, the title is so apropos because it really does focus on the relationship between the brothers. You get to see a little bit of Gavin and Gordo's relationship as they realize their sibling bonds. We also get to see Carter, Joe, and Kelly and kind of get a better feel for how that relationship is so important and how their tethers to one another is so important and how difficult it is also in the case of Carter to be the eldest brother but not the alpha, and hard for Joe to be the alpha but also the younger brother, and sometimes you just need your brothers. That was beautiful to see. I think the relationship between Carter and Elizabeth being explored, the importance of his mother to him and him to his mother, was really beautiful to see. I think the relationships between Oxnard and Carter and this idea of two alphas being explored in this book was absolutely incredible. And I also really, really, really enjoyed getting a little bit more history in this book in terms of the Bennett family, the history in Green Creek, why it means so much to them, the story behind Caswell, and understanding a little bit more about why Robert Livingstone became the way that he is. It was also nice to hear it from a younger Bennett's perspective, one that hasn't been tarnished by things that happened when he was a baby per se, that the adults would have faced at a much older age, like what happened between Gordo and Mark. So I think this book was a very, very, very fun read. I think in general, just the emotional level of exploration, the fact that you did have quite a few positive, happy moments in this book before the huge war broke out, all of those things I think really balanced this book out to me, and I think it was a very well-rounded conclusion to the series. I do wish the ending wasn't as intense as it became. I do kind of wish that Joe got to keep his alpha powers. I do think there was some over-sacrificing that happened, but I also understood that it needed to happen, and it was kind of a joint decision between the Bennett pack and the rest of the wolves on in their pack to basically decide that they were going to put themselves first and their future together first. And I think overall this book was very well done. It was also really sweet to see Rico as a father, Tanner and Chris kind of getting into their roles as a wolf, like in a good way. It was nice to see Jesse and Dominique kind of setting down. I think overall, just in general, this book was very, very sweet, and it was a very well done conclusion to the series. A solid 5-star for me. That does bring us to the conclusion of this video in terms of the Green Creek series by TJ Klune. I do think this series was absolutely beautiful and incredible. I definitely think that as a series, it's a 5-star rating for me. I just think that all the characters are so beautifully written, so beautifully done. I just think that the world created in this is one that you can truly fall into. A lot of TJ Klune books are very emotionally jarring in the way that they make you think. They really make you come to your feels with a lot of these books. He just has a way of creating characters that you absolutely fall in love with. But this one almost felt real and tangible. It felt like you could be a part of the series yourself. You could see yourself as one of the village characters, and especially in Brothersong, seeing how the town, the humans came together in the final battle as well. was absolutely incredible. And I just love the fact that at the end of the book, the wolves, the witches, the humans, they all live in peace. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of all you want. All the villains are defeated and everyone just gets along. And it was just such a beautiful series to read and so necessary in today's times. I would strongly recommend this for anybody. I do think with it being werewolves and seasonal and all these like momentous things happening throughout the series, it's definitely more of a fall winter read for me, but I don't think you're going to go wrong if you read it in the summer either. There's a little bit of everything seasonally in these books. They're absolutely stunning special editions that I found. You can also find non-special edition versions of these books, of course, at your local bookstores, Amazon, wherever you prefer to find them. It's available on audiobook as well, if you prefer Audible or Libby. So many different ways to consume this series, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody who wants to read it. I definitely foresee myself picking up these books here and there and just rejogging my memory of what happened in this series. I think this will stay with me for many years to come, and I'm so thankful to have read this series. And that does bring me to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the series. For those of you that are new, thank you so much. If you made it this far, thank you for being here. For those of you that are returning, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being a part of this channel. Definitely leave comments below on what you guys think of these books, what you guys think of the review. Let me know if it's ever going to make your book list. Let me know if you have a TJ Klune book that you absolutely adore and love. I would love to get everybody's thoughts on TJ Klune and their thoughts on this series. And I will leave everybody with this wherever you are, whether it's morning, evening, or night. I hope you're surrounded by your loved ones. I hope that you're having plenty of time to read, that you guys are really enjoying the holiday spirits, the winter vibes, and all the joy in the world. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.